And I think you can actually see people meaning governments, do a better job than others when it comes to how much they can attract foreign investment, how much they can create startup ecosystems, how much they can make things more favorable to anyone that wants to make that country a better place through investment and stuff. I think there are some countries that are more aggressively pursuing this, doing a better job. And I'd like Ali to check me on this in case I got that wrong. But I feel like the UAE is actually a pretty good example of a country that has done a lot to try to attract foreign investors. Even now, given the state of COVID, I think they have much more lenient like visa opportunities right now. People that want to come work there. So government is very important. The challenge is government in an emerging market is generally more unstable than government in a developed market. So any sort of opportunity you might have to feel like, okay, we're on the right path as a country might change dramatically based on how the political situation plays out over time. I know, for example, I was reading an article by one of our friends, Kalsoon Lakhani, talking about how when TikTok briefly got banned in Pakistan, how she talked about she's an investor in Pakistan, she's Pakistani herself, how this is like bad because not only does it signal that to foreign investors, Pakistan is a place where you might consider these things, like you don't need to worry about government regulation. And fortunately, the ban was overturned and TikTok works in Pakistan right now. But any little thing that happens like that, which is usually a government-driven thing, if you're a conservative investor who's managing, let's say, billions of dollars, and you're already kind of nervous about the idea of putting money into a place like Pakistan or like somewhere in the Middle East, any little thing that tips you over the edge to think that it's too risky can damage a country's reputation and PR for a long, long time. And it's really the role of the government and all other institutions in the country to make sure that in a globally competitive market where people that do manage lots of money, people that have the ability to invest, because the world's so global, they can move that elsewhere. And in some ways, there's like, in the short term, a kind of a zero-sum game of where you can attract capital, where you can attract talent. So I think it's very important that you have a government that works really closely to encourage, especially in a time like now when all economies are struggling, encourage foreign investment, encourage the building of like tech ecosystems. And I think there are a couple governments that do it well. I put UAE as one example, but I'd love to hear Ali, what he thinks about that.
No, so I agree, Anthony. The UAE's done a fantastic job, not just in terms of policy and environment and infrastructure, but just how they encourage. They want to be a hub for the region. You know, there's lots of infrastructure in terms of a number of co-working spaces, accelerators, incubators all across the country. And each of them individually have offers and incentives to attract startups to come there, to register a company, to set up a company. In some cases, to give you housing for you and your teams to come and base yourselves on. I mean, that's amazing, right? If you just facilitate that. But the only thing I'd kind of add that's slightly different to what you said is, emerging markets and developing markets are kind of interchangeable. And the words emerge means, to emerge and to grow. And developing means you're still working on it, right? And when you talk about the region, I think and talking about government, it's no doubt, no brainer. Government is the most important factor in trying to build this ecosystem and build the economy to be able to attract capital and kind of take advantage of network effects and improve policy and regulations to support that. But there's two important factors when it comes to a government being able to do that. So one is stability, right? Is it a priority, or are there bigger problems to solve in the current for a government in a developing market? And many a time that's just keeping the economy afloat, and you can't give incentives and subsidies because you just don't have the money to do it. And there's a developing market, there's a priority to keep your country afloat, right? So stability is key to be able to have the luxury to support what is the riskiest asset class there is, if you think about it, other than crypto, right? So that's one thing. So stability is a key factor, and stability varies, right? The UAE is stable. It's the Saudis now doing similar things. You see in Saudi Arabia is doing similar things. It's stable. They've got a fairly stable economy. A lot of it has to do with oil over decades. They managed to develop their economy, their infrastructure accordingly. you look at Egypt and you look at Pakistan, you look at Turkey, you look at some of these other countries, they're a little more unstable, and therefore it's tougher for them to have such structured policies implemented in mass. So stability is one. The other thing I put that down to is competence. Many a time it's not the most competent in developing markets, especially where you have democracies that are leading functions. And I've seen this firsthand in Pakistan too, right? I mean, I've seen how the government can change, and with it, heads of the SEC or the state bank change, and all of a sudden you've started seeing policy that's progressive, that can support the tech ecosystem, that can support startups in raising capital from foreign investors, and really that competence that is brought in, and if it actually works well and does right, can bring about that change and set about that ecosystem. So I think these are the two points that I'd like to add to everything you said.